I'm sorry. Tyruzzi on Superbot says, where do we draft Christine Michael and who to take in the second round after him?
I'm ready for
Welcome, everybody, to the Sleeper Wire Show. We are a little over a week into free agency, and so much stuff has happened. So much that we had to have a special guest come in and chat with us. Dave Richard from CBS's Fantasy Football Today podcast is in the studio. But before we get into our Dave Richard interview, let's kick it off with a question and some news. I'm your host, Professor Chris, and with me I have our Sleepwire Prophet Hussein. What's up, man?
What is up, Chris, man? Glad to be here.
All right, so leading off with our question here, Hus, which unsigned free agent are you most excited to see where they go?
All right, well, I mean, I might surprise you here, but I'm probably not because, Chris, you know me. And, you know, I like the most obscure guys ever. So I'm going to say Dontrell Inman. I mean, he's shown flashes to be the number one guy when he's had the shot. All he needs is targets. So if he finds he finds himself in a landing spot where there's targets available, Jets, or, you know, there's a couple teams out there that are in needs of receivers, the Ravens are another one. I think that he can make a decent impact. He's not the biggest name, but he's shown the talent when he's healthy and he's able to be out on the field. He's always had guys in front of him, you know, Keenan Allen. He's always had stellar guys in front of him. Now he's finally has an opportunity, and I like for him to have a good opportunity wherever he falls. Hopefully it's someplace where it has a decent amount of targets.
Yeah, I like it. Inman, he's certainly going to find a landing spot somewhere, but he has shown flashes of fantasy relevance in the past, and I would love to see him continue that. I liked him not a ton when he was in San Diego.
Right.
Well, not San Diego, because he's never played in San Diego, has he? Los Angeles. Yeah. Still getting that messed up. But in Chicago, he showed a couple flashes as well, so that's a good pick. You know me, who I'm going to say. My favorite player, Willie Snead. Right.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Love Willie Snead. He's got so much potential, in my opinion. I know a lot of people might not see it, but I really want him to go somewhere where he's not going to be buried in the depth chart.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there with the Saints. I mean, I know they had talent, but for them to bury him the way they did,
I'm guessing that DUI. Sean Payton you're not.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. So that probably had something to do with it. But I am very excited to see where a fellow Ball State alum is going to be next year. All right, let's go ahead and get into our news. First off, Zay Jones, sad story, was arrested Monday night in Los Angeles and was charged with felony vandalism. He was naked in a hotel trying to fight his brother Caleb Jones, who was a wide receiver for the Vikings. Caleb had to stop Zay Jones from jumping out of a 30-story window, like trying to break it and jump out. The facility where Zay's being held right now is not just at a prison. He's being held in the hospital ward of a jail, where suspects are taken when they need medical and or psychiatric attention. So this is something that I think it's smart for us to reserve judgment on at this point in time, 100%. But just keeping you guys updated in case you haven't heard this big news so far. I mean, it's been everywhere. There's video of it. So much blood. It's not good.
Get help.
Yep. Get help. So we're going to hope for that, but certainly not passing out any judgment on Zay Jones as of right now. We have no idea what the story is.
Yeah. Wish him the best.
Absolutely. Well, on a different note, wishing this guy the best, Danny Woodhead has decided to retire after a pretty exciting career, especially for PPR leagues and fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, Danny Woodhead, the guy has been great every year other than, you know, the years where we hyped him up and then he was just off, you know, like last year was a huge one of them. But, yeah, I mean, it's just time for him to hang it up. You know, he's always seemed to have these injury lingering issues every year. You know, he's in his 30s at this point. He's had a great career. You know, I'm sure he was hoping for a better role on the team, and you know, he just wasn't able to stay healthy. Sometimes you gotta listen to your body.
Yep, that's true. My best memory I'll ever have of Danny Woodhead is I was actually playing against him a couple years ago. It would have been in 2015, and I was up. I think this was a Monday night game. I was up by like 60 points, and the other person only had Danny Woodhead going. And this is the game where Woodhead was like, hey, I'm going to score 4 touchdowns this game.
I wasn't sure if you were talking about Chris Moore or not. Like the football player, Chris Moore.
No.
Like against him.
But yeah, 4 touchdowns. I knew being up 60 with one player I was going to win, but still made me nervous, that 4-touchdown game. And he only had 60 all-purpose yards. 4 touchdowns and 60 total yards. That was crazy. Crazy. But yeah, good career for Danny Woodhead. We're sad to see him go, and we wish him the best. Moving on, the Colts, however, are starting to address their receiving options, which basically were T.Y. Hilton, Jack Doyle, and Chester Rogers. So it was pretty mediocre over there. They signed Ryan Grant to a 1-year, $5 million prove-it deal after he failed the physical with Baltimore. And I'm putting failed in quotes when I say that.
Right.
Because it was like, oh, Michael Crabtree's going to come be a Raven. Ryan Grant, sorry for giving you all this money. We're going to say you failed so we don't have to sign you because we want Crabtree. There's no other way around it.
Right. Yeah. There was plenty of rumblings. His agent came out and said, he's been fine. Even the team before said his physicals have been fine.
He passed the physical with the Colts.
Yeah. So, I really like Ryan Grant. He's a nice PPR piece. I think he can serve a good option for that short area for Andrew Luck. They definitely need some. They've had some turnover. They only have Ty there. That's the most relative piece with Moncrief now to the Jaguars. I really do like Ryan Grant. I think he's one of those underrated players that, especially last year, he showed what he was able to do. He caught 45 receptions, almost 600 yards and 4 touchdowns. And his average was at 12.7, which is not terrible at all. So he's able to make guys miss as well. So you got to like that if you're a Colts fan.
Yeah, I certainly do. He's an upgrade over almost every other person on that roster.
Yeah, for sure.
And the Colts also signed Eric Ebron to a 2-year deal. It's very incentive-laden. He can get up to $15 million, but he's going to have to earn that.
Yeah,
he's going to have to stay healthy. He's going to have to stop dropping passes. He's going to have to produce. 2-year deal. Likely to be – he's going to be the second string to Jack Doyle, but this tells me that the Colts are going to be running a lot of 2 tight end sets, which they were doing back when they had Dwayne Allen and Kobe Fleener anyway. I think they want to get back to that now that they'll have a good second tight end. And Ebron is a talented tight end. He just drops the ball a lot.
Yeah, hopefully he can prove it this year. He hasn't really in the past. He's proved that he has talent, but other than that, he just hasn't put it all together. So he's in a new, he's in a new landing spot. Let's see.
Yep, he's streaky and injury prone, which is not a great combination.
Not at all.
Nope. Next piece of news. Well, speaking of Willie Snead, he visited the Ravens on Wednesday. So no news as to whether or not he's signed yet, if they offered him a deal, but that would be a decent landing spot. The Ravens, they've got Crabtree, John Brown, Rashad Perriman, and then that's about it.
Yeah, they could use Willie Snead here. I think he would be a great addition to their core because they have nothing at this point.
Yeah, I think he would be good. Now, the one worry I have is that Joe Flacco doesn't really produce fantasy football stars out at the wide receiver position.
No. Flexes. He'll give you a flex. Yeah, he'll give you a flex. He'll give you a number 2 wide receiver. Low end, very low end. But he can do it. He can do it. It'll be interesting to see. All these guys are going to be their first year into a new offense. So but somebody's got to catch the ball. So there we go.
Yep. I agree. So excited to see where he's going to land, as mentioned at the beginning of the show. The Jaguars have released Allen Hurns and Mercedes Lewis. Not really a surprise on either one, especially after they brought in Austin Seferian-Jenkins.
Hurns, though, I was a little surprised with Hurns. I think Hurns was really good. But, they have so many receivers, so I guess they don't even need them.
Yeah. Marquise Lee, D.D. Westbrook, Keelan Cole.
Cole, yeah, I really like Cole as well. Yeah.
Yep. So they do have 3 really good starting receivers. Allen Hurns, probably not the best of those 3.
Yeah, it's just that they didn't bring back any of their guys. They're giving Bortles hey, they have Lee. So, Lee here's a familiar guy. These other guys, yeah, exactly. So
The Allens are gone.
The Allens are gone.
All right, now we're going to get into some old news, some stuff that happened over the weekend between last week's show and this week's show. So we'll just kind of go through this a little quick just in case you haven't heard it. Jordy Nelson signed a 2-year, $15 million deal with the Raiders, $13 million guaranteed. Good for him for getting paid. In other Raiders news, Marshawn Lynch received a $1 million roster bonus, so he's going to be their feature back this year most likely. And Eric Decker visited the Raiders on Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, he still took a $500,000 cut. So we'll still have to wait and see. I mean, it's off season, so yeah, him being on the roster is good. They got Doug Martin there, so I mean, and they still have those other guys there. They did get rid of their fullback, who's been there for a while. Never really done much fantasy wise, but I don't know. I'm still not in love with Lynch. I'm super on the fence. I'm probably not going to like him this year as well.
I'm saying borderline RB 2 or 3.
Yeah.
You can't expect a whole lot from him, but he is still their best running back. Maybe not their best pass catcher, but still the best running back.
Yeah, fair.
As we mentioned a couple minutes ago, this happened over the weekend. The Raiders released Michael Crabtree, and within 24 hours, he had a 3-year deal with the Ravens. So good for him. The Colts made a phenomenal trade.
Yep.
They traded the 3rd overall pick this year to the Jets in exchange for the 6th overall. So they swapped first-round picks. And the Colts also got the Jets' 37th and 49th overall. So 2 second-round picks this year and a second-round pick in 2019.
Just looking at Rosen.
The Jets, they are going to draft a quarterback.
Yes, they need one.
That's why you give up this much.
Yes.
And the Colts are like, you know what? Maybe having Brissett last year was not such a bad thing.
Right.
Because they're still most likely going to get the guy that they wanted at 3 at the 6th spot. And now they have 2 extra picks. Second-round picks even, which is huge.
Pretty huge.
Yeah. So it's exciting to be a Colts fan.
Surprise to Dylan.
Vontaze Burfict is facing a 4-game suspension for violating the NFL's performance-enhancing drugs policy. The Rams are restructuring Tavon Austin's contract so that they can keep him. It was rumored that he was going to be released, but they wanted to keep him. Austin Seferian-Jenkins going to the Jags. Hus, I want to ask you how confident or how excited you are about this next one, though. Tyler Eifert, 1-year deal to stay back in Cincinnati with the Bengals.
I like it, actually. I was looking at tight ends, and where I'd feel comfortable. And I think Tyler Eifert's one of those guys where I don't feel comfortable with him, but he's that last guy where after I'm not feeling comfortable anymore, it's like, Tyler Eifert. He's going to grab touchdowns. There's not many options there. They have options, but they don't seem to put it together, and they still have Marvin Lewis. So, I mean, they didn't get rid of any of the problems, and they're showing up this year with the same thing. What are they going to do? Okay, repeat, rinse, wash, repeat. Tyler Eifert's going to be a red zone threat. Adrian Green's going to be a top 10 wide receiver again. Other than that, he has to stay healthy. He has not done that. I like Croft. So he'll be waiting in the wing when he does get injured because, unfortunately, Eifert does just seem like an injury-prone guy. I don't see him staying healthy all year.
No, absolutely not. And this might be a deal that also has performance incentives in it as well. It has to, right?
It has to. I mean, if you're Eifert, you would have to sign something that involves incentives like that because, I mean, he was, like what? I mean, if he could stay healthy, and where would we put him? Top 5 easily?
If I knew he was going to play 16 games, yeah. I would say tight end 8 at the worst.
At the very worst, yeah. And I mean, we can argue that he could probably be in that top 5, I think, based off of his touchdown potential, and if he could stay healthy. But yeah, here we are. We're just not able to see it from him. So this is what the team needs to see.
Holy crap! Breaking news: the Colts signed Christine Michael.
Christine Michael.
Wow! Wow! That came through 4 minutes ago.
Max loves this.
Whew, yeah,
and so do you, right? Excited. You really love this, right?
No, I am anti-Christine Michael. Yeah, this is, a depth move, I hope.
Yeah.
Man, this is rough. Maybe they're thinking about trading out of that Saquon Barkley at 6 spot and trading back, and they're like, you know what, Christine Michael's going to be good enough.
We're good. We got Michael.
I hope that's not the case.
Yeah.
Let's move on to another washed-up running back, though. The Patriots signed Jeremy Hill for $1.5 million, but the key here, only $150,000 of it is guaranteed.
That's insane. I mean, the fact that Jeremy Hill wasn't able to get something, a bigger deal.
Well, what this tells me is that I don't think they're going to keep Jeremy Hill and Mike Gillislee. They're not going to want two goal line backs. So maybe they brought in Jeremy Hill to compete with Gillislee for that position, and one of them gets cut before the season starts.
Yeah, and I would say Gillislee doesn't have as big of a chip on his shoulder as Jeremy Hill did, because Jeremy Hill, he was the number one back at one point.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. And relegated to the number 3 back last year.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Couple last pieces of insignificant news, really. Well, maybe not for you. Former Broncos wide receiver Cody Lattimore has signed with the New York Giants.
Insignificant news.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well.
Yeah.
And the last piece of insignificant news here, the Panthers agreed to a contract with wide receiver Jarius Wright, who was with the Vikings. Also insignificant. But
what about the Lions going to the Super Bowl? Did we report that already?
The Lions going to the Super Bowl? No, we didn't. We might have brought it up last week, but no. So if you guys don't know what we're talking about, it's if you have LeGarrette Blount on your team, you're winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah. So Lions fans, get ready. It's your time. It's your time. I want to see you doing stuff that tops what Bill's Mafia was doing at tailgate. So
yeah, if you don't know who that is, go on the sleeper bot.
Bill's Mafia, man, that was crazy. Those guys are nuts. Entertaining, but nuts.
Yeah.
You know, there was a point in time last season where some of those like jumping into flaming tables were getting so ridiculous. I was like, you know what, the NFL is going to ban. We're not going to be able to do this anymore, man. All right, now I want to welcome a very special guest to the show, Dave Richard, senior fantasy writer for CBS Sports and the shining star of the Fantasy Football Today podcast. You can find him on Twitter at Dave Richard. Dave, how's it going, man?
I've never been described as a shining star. I've been called a fat tub of lard, a loud mouth.
I had
annoying. Star
in there, but it didn't seem good enough.
Yeah. I don't know. Even if I were a star, I don't think I'd be shining very much. You can call me whatever you want. It's just, you know.
Well, let's go with that. Shining star, Dave Richard. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. There are a couple things that we wanted to talk to you about. So let's go ahead and kick it off. I got a few questions that I want to ask you here. What do you think so far? I know free agency hasn't been open very long, but what is your biggest free agent impact?
Well, I mean, there's a ton of impacts. Every single player that changes has an impact in fantasy. If you're asking me the ones that are the best for fantasy, I would narrow it down to Kirk Cousins going to Minnesota, where he should be able to continue his efficient passing ways, maybe even on a little bit of a grander scale, because I like his receiving core better now than what he had in Washington. There's always change in Washington. He should have stability now with Thielen, Diggs, Rudolph. That's a pretty good trio. That run game will get going with Dalvin Cook coming back. And the offensive line's probably going to get upgraded again this offseason. And I really like the offensive coordinator, John DeFilippo. I think he's going to be able to put Cousins in a position to be even better in the red zone than what he was in Washington. That's saying something, because he was pretty good there. The other player that I think took a huge leap forward and will get a lot of attention in fantasy is a former Viking, Jerick McKinnon, now with the 49ers.
Oh, yeah.
And they got rid of Carlos Hyde. I don't think they're going to draft another running back. I'd be surprised if they did. They took 2 of them last year. I would imagine McKinnon leads the run game for San Francisco with him, Matt Breida, Joe Williams, each of them taking a part, but McKinnon taking the biggest part of them all. And I laid out projections for him. I think he can get 1,200 total yards in San Francisco.
Woo! Man.
Yeah.
That is beautiful. Yeah.
That would be a big game.
You know, we need as many of those running backs as we can.
We sure do.
That can come through and put up numbers. He will not be a touchdown beast by any stretch. He might only score 6 times. So if you're drafting McKinnon, you're doing it on the hope that he can put together 80 yards per game on average. That would come out to, like I said, about 1,200 yards.
Now, do you feel like he's going to do that through air and on the ground, those 6 touchdowns?
Absolutely. It's combined. It's not going to be 6 rushing, 6 receiving. That would be crazy.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to be a goal line bruiser. He's not that guy.
Who was your biggest free agent impact?
Well, I actually really like Jerick McKinnon. I like Jerick McKinnon. I also like Jordy Nelson just on the wide receiver side. Jordy, I believe he's still going to take over that Crabtree role, that touchdown I don't know. I'm still not a huge believer in Cooper. So I'm really high on Jordy Nelson. You asked me a couple of weeks ago, how did I feel without Aaron Rodgers being there? Thought about it some. Still very high on Jordy. I think he's still going to have that high touchdown potential. Now, it's not going to be the way you like it, but I'm looking at him as a great flex, getting him after round 4 or 5. Now, if he's showing all these signs now, maybe we won't get him there because of his name and all that. But Jerick McKinnon and Jordy Nelson, love these guys. I would hope that he puts up a little bit more than 6 touchdowns. Jerick McKinnon, I'm thinking he can catch some through the air, and in PPR league is really where I like him.
There's no doubt that that's where the value is for McKinnon. And let me just echo your sentiment, Bruce, on Jordy. I'm with you on this one, but it like the timing is perfect for me to talk about it because I spent the day watching film with his, and I don't think there's a drop off from Jordy to Crabtree. In fact, I think Jordy might actually be a little bit better than Crabtree.
I agree.
Neither of these guys are burners.
No.
I think Jordy just has a little bit better technique in his route running. He's got a better catch rate. He's just as good in the red zone. I think all it took for me to really buy into him was just watching on film, and son of a gun, he's going to end up being about as good, if not better, than Crabtree. The biggest concern I've got is whether or not John Gruden's track record is focused on one receiver. One guy at wide receiver, 10 out of his 11 seasons gets over 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. Clockwork. Only once in Gruden's coaching career have multiple wide receivers gone off in the same season, and it was Tim Brown and Jerry Rice.
And you know what? That's exactly where my
Jordy Nelson are not Tim Brown and Jerry Rice. So,
no.
I would say that Jordy could get close to 800 yards and 6 touchdowns. I think that if you draft him as a flex, as a number 3 fantasy receiver, you're going to be okay. I still think that there are at least 30 wide receivers that I'd rather have ahead of Jordy Nelson. If he's the 17th receiver off the board, then he's being drafted as a number 2 wide receiver, right? Because 12 wide receivers, first 12 are number 1s, second 12 are number 2s.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't get into that because I just don't think he's got 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns in him. And that's not, listen, 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. There's going to be a lot of wide receivers this year who finish as a number 2 option and don't get 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. But that's what I'm shooting for. If I'm drafting the 17th wide receiver in my fantasy draft, 16 wide receivers are already off the board. I want a guy that's going to get me to 1,000 or at least 1,007. I don't think Jordy's going to do quite that well. He'll fall short of it.
So maybe him being drafted in the 4th round, as of right now anyway, a little too high?
Too high for me.
All right, and then my biggest free agent impact player is Dion Lewis, and it was mainly because of all the hype and excitement for Derrick Henry coming up. Oh, he's this bulldozer, but he's also got great speed. He's going to be awesome in that Titans offense. And then Dion Lewis came in, and my instant reaction, and I still hold true to it, and Hus knows this, I think Dion Lewis is going to outscore Derrick Henry in every format.
Yep. No arguments there, buddy.
Yep, I think he will. If he stays healthy.
I think if he did, well, that's the yes. And that was the yes that I was about to drop on you, is that if he plays 16 games, then I agree with you. But we know that it's rare for him to play 16 games. He did it last year, and he did it barely playing the first 5 games of the year. And then in the 3 years prior, he missed at least 7 games per season. So he's a brittle dude who really benefited from being the main running back in New England. You think about that situation, Tom Brady's the quarterback. How many defenses are going to dare Tom Brady to throw? Not many. So now he's in Tennessee, completely different situation. We can all talk about how Marcus Mariota has potential, but a defensive coordinator is going to feel a lot better about trying to stop the run with Mariota as the quarterback versus Tom Brady as the quarterback. So it's really a big change of scenery for Dion Lewis, and I'm almost positive the Titans won't give him goal line carries when they've got Derrick Henry around. And I think Derrick Henry could still get around 12 touches a game in the games that Dion Lewis is healthy for. And in the games where Dion Lewis isn't healthy, well, Derrick Henry should theoretically get 15-plus touches in those games. I wish I could get a beat on how that coaching staff feels about Henry. Remember, this is a whole new coaching staff.
Right.
They didn't draft Derrick Henry. They inherited him from Mike Mularkey, who apparently couldn't help himself when he drafted Derrick Henry a few years ago. So I'm wondering if the things that you look at Derrick Henry are that he doesn't have burning speed getting to the edge. As a straight line runner, he can get it done. He needs an offensive line to help him pop open holes. He's physical. There's no question about it, but he needs the help from the offensive line. And I wonder if those qualities kind of keep him from being viewed as the every down back that fantasy owners thought he was going to be before free agency started.
What's your favorite free agent landing spot? Not necessarily the biggest impact, but just your favorite spot.
My favorite landing spot without fantasy impact, I really like Sheldon Richardson. I think that's just going to make that defense even more dangerous. I think that I think he's real deal and just a huge upgrade. I spent a big chunk of the offseason before free agency watching Vikings film as part of a scouting assignment that I had, the Scouting Academy online. Shout out to the Scouting Academy. They help you learn how to scout better. And so one of my first assignments was a player on that defensive line. And I thought the player was just kind of average, nothing special. And they're replacing the player that I scouted with Sheldon Richardson, and it's going to make a huge impact on that defense. So not only did they go and get Kirk Cousins, which is a huge deal for the Vikings, but they also upgraded their defense. Off the top of my head, I think that that's a phenomenal move. Going back to Tennessee, I think it's interesting that Malcolm Butler went there. Yeah. I don't know how good he's, but now the Titans have a couple of starting corners who are former Patriots. They've got a head coach who's a former Patriot. There's a lot of lineage there that makes things interesting. And I'll give you one more because I just thought of it. Tyrann Mathieu going to Houston, where he's going to play safety. That makes that defense even stronger.
Yeah, as a Colts fan, I don't like the other AFC South secondaries now. They just all got so much better.
Yeah, and these safeties, it took so hard. It was so hard for them to get paid. And then we saw the first domino start to drop. So hopefully we see some more guys. But yeah, it's a lot of shakeup for the defensive positions this year, and that's why I know Dave is very big on this. He doesn't really like to read into the schedule once ever it does prepare, because there's going to be a lot of teams have really different defensive schemes and different coordinators. So it's interesting to see. It's always fun to talk about the offensive side, though.
Hus, what's your favorite free agent landing spot?
I love the fact that the Giants went out there and got Nate Soldier. They finally have somebody that can protect, their quarterback. I mean, I think this is a big blow for Brady as well. I mean, he needed that time. He had all the time in the world. Now he doesn't. Not to say that, Belichick doesn't have someone lined up behind him, but I think that was one of the bigger blows for them. And it's a really, I'm going to just go with my fandom here, and I'm going to say Nate Soldier. I really love the fact that he was able, the Giants were able to get somebody to cover their quarterback.
Yeah, I like it. And I'm going to go with Case Keenum for mine for really just two reasons. The wide receivers. I know Demaryius Thomas finished as the wide receiver 16 last year. He was still pretty good, but I really just personally, I want Emmanuel Sanders to be great again.
Yeah,
what I'm saying? Like, you just have that player you want to succeed. I really like him and Demaryius Thomas, and they just haven't had the quarterback.
100%.
They're both good dudes, and there's no question that Keenum is an upgrade over what they had before. And the thing that I'd point out to you is that Keenum had a career year in Minnesota. A lot of it had to do with the receivers that he was working with. So hopefully he can continue to benefit from that in Denver. But even before he went to Minnesota, he was completing just over 60% of his passes. And that was with the Rams. And that was with the Jeff Fisher Rams he was doing that with. So I'd like to think that Keenum can probably get you closer to a 65% completion rate. That would be good. That means higher catch rates for Sanders and Thomas, and they're going to get overlooked. I think I saw Mike. Who did I see tweeting this? Was it Mike Clay who tweeted it today that Emmanuel Sanders' ADP in MFL 10s right now is 91?
Oh, wow.
That's atrocious.
What round
That's
is
a
that?
mistake.
If
it's the 10th round.
It's got to be round 9, right?
That's a mistake.
Round 9 starts with 90, ends with 90. So, that'd be a 10th round.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, and you know what? Sanders always gets overlooked. And now that he has a quarterback, I don't understand how people could do this. I mean,
I'll tell you what, I hope it stays there.
Yeah, I mean, this is the best. Yeah, these are the best wide receivers that Keenum has played with. And I want to say the same thing for them since they had Peyton.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, you have to say that. Who else could possibly?
Right, yeah, I want to say you have to.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move to the least favorite free agent landing spot.
I'm a little discouraged with Sammy Watkins going to Kansas City. And I know theoretically it's a great fit, but I don't know if he's going to put up the numbers that, everybody wants. There's somebody in every league who's in love with Sammy Watkins and thinks that he's still going to go back to when he had over 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns with Buffalo. And I don't think this is the spot for it because he's sharing the ball too much.
Great. Yeah.
It's hard to find a situation where 3 different players on a team get over 100 targets each. And that's kind of part of the formula that you need to have a good fantasy season. Watkins managed to do that 1,045-yard, 9-touchdown season. He did that under 100 targets, but it was just barely under 100. It was like 96 targets or something like that. And I love how he fits in there. Like, this might also be one of my favorite landing spots for pure football purposes, but for fantasy purposes, Sammy to me is a capable number 3 receiver who you're going to feel uncomfortable starting week in and week out because he's going to be so inconsistent. And frankly, I think his presence there will greatly help Kelsey and Tyreek Hill have a chance to still be very good for their fantasy owners, but it's really going to help Patrick Mahomes. He should be in a position to put up some huge numbers this year.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you, and Watkins was also mine. So I'm going to go with Carlos Hyde on this because, I mean, the Browns they currently have two number 1 running backs, and if you go to PPR formats, Duke Johnson was number 12 and Carlos Hyde was number 8. So, I mean, this is not a good position for either one of them. I think this hurts Duke a little less because he's still going to be out there catching passes. And with Todd Haley out there, I think they're still going to lean on him, even though Carlos Hyde did show good grasp of catching the ball. It doesn't seem like that happened when Garoppolo took over. But prior to that, looked like he was pretty much, he catch like maybe 40, 50 balls or something.
He got 59 last
way
year.
Off. Yeah, exactly. I want to say it's way more. He caught a ton of balls last year. So I could see him doing this. Hopefully he takes this away from Duke Johnson. But right now, I got to say Carlos Hyde as far as fantasy.
I agree with you on that. And I can't remember. I could go back and look. There probably are times, but I can't remember a time when Todd Haley used multiple running backs week in and week out. And maybe it's because he was just blessed with great running backs, Le'Veon Bell, Jamal Charles, just to name 2 of the guys that he worked with, D'Angelo Williams. The one year when he didn't have Le'Veon Bell, he had D'Angelo Williams. And Williams went off.
Oh, yeah.
And he was the only guy.
Complete beast.
So unless you see Duke Johnson get traded, which he's in a contract year, I highly doubt that happens, but you never know. Like, short of that, I think you're going to see Carlos Hyde in the Crowell role, which means his receptions are just going to fall off a cliff.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah.
The Browns love Duke Johnson.
Yes.
Yeah, oh, yeah. I mean, how could you not? I love him every year.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they can't take away him from his role.
He does it so well. I mean, and Todd Haley loves that as well. It almost makes me think that, is it crazy to think that they might feature Duke Johnson?
Then it's possible that happens if Hyde comes to camp. And right now you say, well, how could that possibly be? Because they signed Hyde. They've got to like Hyde. They don't know what they've got in him until August. Sure.
Right.
Same thing with Latavius last year.
Yeah, right. So if he
just
comes
different
to camp
teams,
and he's overweight or he's just not getting it, yeah, right. You could see Duke back in that big role.
Yeah.
Yep, you absolutely could. And I'm actually going to take a Brown with mine as well. It's Jarvis Landry. I have a deep, profound love for Jarvis Landry in my PPR leagues. For 3 straight years now, he's just always one of my favorite players to draft. And after finishing as the wide receiver 5 last season, I believe, in PPR, where he was just phenomenal, that's not happening in Cleveland this year. And it was just – I really wanted him to go somewhere where he could be productive for fantasy, and I just don't see that happening.
I definitely would have loved to see him on the Bills, especially with the Zay Jones news.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
That's
but
crazy.
The Bills would love to see him on the Bills with this Zay Jones news.
Yeah. Zay Jones news.
Kind of switched the topic here a little bit. Well, actually, not kind of. Completely switched the topic. You had a tweet that I saw that I absolutely loved, and you said that this past Sunday's episode of The Walking Dead was the best episode in a year. So before I let you go on with that, I want to say, if you haven't seen it yet, spoilers, so pause the episode. Dave, how great was Lucille on fire?
Whew. Oh, it was awesome. The whole episode was awesome because they finally significantly advanced storylines after like a year of them barely doing it. So, I think it's kind of cheap that Negan got away.
Yeah.
You knew it was going to happen, but it was still, it was still interesting to see how he would get away. And the fact that Rick got a hold of Lucille and then lit her on fire while it had zombie guts all over it is just
beautiful.
It was a cool episode. I thought that the record lady was pretty weird, but that's a seed that's gonna sprout down the line. That's a character we will all see again.
Right. Yeah.
And a rare Walking Dead episode where nobody dies. So, I was on the edge of my seat. First time in the year, I was on the edge of my seat watching The Walking Dead.
Yeah, it was really, really good. That whole scene, that whole fight scene in the building and the conversation before the fight, I absolutely loved.
Yeah, I was completely ear to ear on the whole thing. Enjoyed every bit of it. Sucks that Carl had to die for this to come out of Rick, but I enjoyed every bit of this episode.
Yeah, so anyway, staying along the topic of The Walking Dead, one of the things I thought might be kind of fun is, Dave, I want to build an offense with Walking Dead characters. So who would you take as the quarterback?
Who's the most intelligent member of The Walking Dead? Well, that might be Judith, given how this operated. No, we can't go with the baby.
The baby.
I mean, the smartest person might be that weird blonde lady who showed up.
Right.
Yeah. We don't know yet.
I guess it would have to be Rick. I know that's way out, but I'm thinking back to some of the things that he did, like the way that he killed the Terminus people when they tried to trap Rick's people in church. The way that he took care of that gang. It was like a biker gang, but like the way that he's eliminated threats that have threatened his family and friends has been pretty ingenious.
Oh yeah, if you're down in the fourth quarter, you want Rick leading your offense.
Yeah, he's basically like the old Eli Manning, like like when you want him in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
All right, so Rick, it is the obvious one. That's the one I thought of too. The leader comes up clutch when he needs to. What about running back?
Running back, I would go with Morgan because it's clear to me that he's got unbelievable stamina. And, he's walking all over the place, killing walkers along the way with a stick. He doesn't even need a gun.
Have you been asked this question before? Because you had that.
He's had it dialed.
About it. I'm just thinking about it as we're going. Like, I've already got 2 receivers already.
He's had this in his pocket. I really hope someone asks me this.
This is like a loaded gun right now.
No, man. I think Morgan will be there in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And be just as strong as he was in the first 3 quarters.
Agreed.
And so
he might go a little psycho.
And I think he's dependable.
Yeah, he might go a little psycho around the 50-yard line or something while he's halfway there.
Maybe.
You know what,
as long as he doesn't fumble.
If you look at the progression of any character, his is by far the most up and down roller coaster mindset. Is just back and forth.
He's been through the most along with Rick. I mean, he's the first character along with Rick. I mean, we've seen less of his story. I mean, in his first story he lost his whole family. Rick actually had some of his family along with it. He lost his whole family initially, his kid and his wife, and just kind of had to muster along the way. So that's a great, I'd love to see him as a bowling ball running back, just getting through all the Walker other players.
Since Dave already has these locked and loaded, we're just going to call this Dave's Walking Dead football team. So who do you got at wide receiver?
Well, I think Michonne would have to be one of the receivers because she's pretty relentless. I would imagine she would be a little bit more of the deep threat. Daryl would be the other receiver. So in a 2-receiver formation, you'll see them on opposite sides. I just think both of them are cagey. They'll be able to
killer combo,
run precise routes. Yeah, and I think Michonne probably can run, a 4-5 or so. And Daryl's probably more of like a 4-6, 4-7 type.
But
I think Michonne is tall, and she's like part of the Black Panther family.
Yeah.
So like on top of everything else, she's not only does she take out zombies, but she can also she's helped defended Wakanda.
Yeah.
So I think you've got to find a spot for her on the.
Oh yeah.
And I think wide receiver is absolutely the play.
You've definitely thought about this. Who's your tight end?
I swear to God I haven't. You brought it up. Now the tight end is tough because you want somebody who's big, specifically bigger there. You don't need somebody with speed more than anything else. See, now you caught me. Now I'm not.
I was thinking Abraham.
Yeah, sure. Now, see, if we're allowed to use,
okay, let's keep it at living characters then.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Negan comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean, Abraham would be a great tight end. He'd be a great left tackle. It's the dude with the beard and the beanie cap who Rick fought at the prison, and he died.
The black dude?
He had these weird hallucinations when he died, but I think he's got the size that you're looking for at tight end.
No.
Okay.
So either him or Abraham.
Forgive us.
Are you talking about Tyrese Williams?
I think so. Yeah, Tyrese.
It
was
Tyrese.
Yep.
I didn't know his last name was Williams.
Yeah, the guy with the beanie.
Tyrese.
It was Tyrese. He was
He
huge.
was in the Grove episode with Carol, too. Yeah, just a big dude. You know what? That's my left tackle. Abraham.
Rick at quarterback. Running back, we have Morgan. Wide receivers were Michonne and Daryl, and tight end, Abraham.
What about Carol? Where's Carol?
Sign me up, man.
Is Carol the kicker?
Carol's the offensive coordinator.
Oh, of course she is.
Carol is no. She's the defensive coordinator.
Oh, of course she is.
I like it.
Even better.
Way too. She's going to make sure that no one scores on our team.
All right, guys, that's all we have time for with Dave. So before we say goodbye, Mr. Dave Richard, why don't you give our listeners tell them where they can find you?
Well, when you want great fantasy football advice or, just want to build a Walking Dead fantasy team, let's talk about it on Twitter, at Dave Richard. Everything I write, every video I do, every podcast I'm on, it's all through CBSSports.com. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask every single listener of the Sleeper Wire podcast to give a shot to CBS Sports HQ. It's our newest over-the-top streaming channel, 24/7 scores, news, highlights, and smart analysis, and lots of fantasy talk, no matter the sport. We get it in there. And if you like to put a little money on the games, we get that in there too. Real, no nonsense, but still a good time and a good informational experience. You'll get your sports information show back if you stream CBS Sports HQ. You can do it from your phone, your computer, through Roku, Apple TV, Chromecast, Amazon Fire, all those places. We're there, ready to keep you up to date on the world of sport.
What about my pager? Will you page me?
We can probably page you some numbers, just like random numbers.
All right, Dave. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Thank you guys for listening to the show. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at SleeperWire Show. You can follow Hus on Twitter at SleeperWire Hus, and I'm on there at Seymour SleeperWire, and we're on SleeperBot at Prophet Hus and Professor Chris. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll catch you next time.